Welcome to Issues of Contemporary Politics with Dr. Brovkin. Today, my dear friends and subscribers and guests to this channel, I would like, as many others, to talk about Iran, but specifically about the discussion about what had happened in Iran, this discussion in Russia. And the title of today's presentation is President Trump, a daring leader or a reckless gambler. Now, obviously, the official reaction of Russian leadership to the events in Iran has been quite negative, and President Putin has expressed condolences to the family of Ayatollah and to the Iranian people. Because some of the members of the family of Ayatollah were killed as well. And then the official reaction was that it was a violation of international law and all other predictable things. But what is more important and interesting for me was to see the reaction of a Russian community of experts and also of the interpretations that they provided in terms of what is going on, what are the objectives of the two sides in this current war, but also the interpretation of the behavior of President Trump and the plans of his opponents. So this is what I also found, that the discussions that are going on in the Russian talk shows and media are in a sense parallel to the same kind of polarization that is happening in American media and in Western media generally, which is that some express cautious optimism and say this is a daring act that may lead to success. And others, just as the Russians do, say that this is a reckless gambling that may lead to disaster. So let me just then elaborate on the arguments and ideas provided by the Russian experts. And these are weekly discussions that are often cited, and that's a gathering of professors from the Institute of USA and Canada, of the Academy of Sciences, the politicians, Duma members, generals, and other top-rate specialists that express these opinions. And as I said, there are two narratives or theories. One of them, as I say, praises Trump as an extraordinary leader. Probably praises is not the correct word, but in a sense it looks at Trump as an extraordinary and daring leader in his entire actions since he came to power and in his vision of America great again. And that is, the argument goes, can be seen from his domestic politics to his politics in policies in Latin America, Middle East, and elsewhere. So in his domestic policies, it's outright war against the Democrats and the woke culture and the globalists. And in his Latin America agenda, it is that he believes in his mission, in his star, after the assassination attempt, and that is in his formula to take over Western Hemisphere as a corollary to the Monroe Doctrine. And that is, like, we can see that already in the actions in Venezuela. No obstacles are to be feared. It's essentially a straightforward projection of force. And the success, or what appeared to be a success in Venezuela, that the president was seized and there was no protest and the Venezuelan government seems to be collaborating, empowered Trump to do more. And so now we have threats against Cuba, and Mexico complied with American demands, and there is talk about putting a lot of effort into non-election of President Lula in Brazil next year. In other words, this offensive on all the fronts. Now, in the Middle East, the same kind of logic applies by those analysts who argue that he is going to do everything to prevail, and that is as General Buzinski yesterday pointed out, that Americans have gathered the largest ever force in the Middle East, with the 2 aircraft carrier groups and bases and dozens of F-15s and 35s and the rest of it. And that is a huge force. However, General Buzinski, General Lieutenant General, it's the highest military rank in Russia, pointed out that this is not as big as a force assembled in the first Iraq war of 1991, when 500,000 troops were deployed, and not as much as President Bush has deployed in the invasion of Iraq in 2003. In other words, this force is good enough to render a very, very serious blow to Iran and its military capabilities, but it's not good enough to overrun and defeat Iran unless it collapses internally. But this is the thing that the Russian observers point out, that he may prevail, President Trump may prevail, because of the overwhelming force that they have assembled, and because unpredictability of the internal situation in Iran, especially in view of some domestic opposition and the minorities such as the Kurds and the Arabs close to the border, that nobody knows how they would respond to the crises. And obviously the American plan, as pointed out by President Trump himself, is to push the domestic opposition into power, regime change. So domestic agenda, according to these Russian specialists, is that President Trump may prevail, and in that case he would crush domestic opposition. If need be, if he loses elections, he may go for the rule of emergency or stay in power another term and imprison democratic leaders. Essentially, it boils down to a coup d'etat. But he may actually go for this if he is empowered, if he wins in this war, and if he feels, as he does, that he has a mission to fulfill, that he was spared by God, as he believes, in order to fulfill his agenda. Now, my comment to this interpretation and this view is that these Russian commentators, I don't think they understand the way American system works. I think it's extremely difficult for President Trump to overcome domestic opposition in the United States, because institutions are very, very well entrenched and very powerful, and no matter how successful he is, he cannot overcome the power of Congress without disbanding it, or the power of the Supreme Court, which had just made a ruling against him, and there's nothing he can do but imagine ways around it. In other words, the domestic agenda of President Trump, if he loses this conflict in the Middle East, may not be realized, and he may be outvoted, and then, of course, even impeached and driven out of office. But we shall see. Now, the second interpretation, which I have pointed out, can be entitled dangerous gambler or a reckless gambler. And this was offered by one of the professors in the Russian Institute of the USA and Canada, a very prestigious and knowledgeable prestigious institution, knowledgeable people work there. And so this essentially interpretation boils down to some other factors that need to be taken into account. Now, in domestic policies, these people point out that the Democrats are not going to sit and wait until he imprisons them or stages a coup d'etat. They will do their utmost to win elections in the midterm. And if they do, then chances of President Trump staying in power are quite limited. But most importantly, is that his so-called success in Latin America, according to these Russian specialists, is only visible and it's ephemeral, if you want, because yes, Venezuela may appear like it complied, but the regime is still there. The political system is there. They made a decision to wait out Trump, just like the Europeans have. They comply, but they are still in control, and their infrastructure of state is still in control. And at any moment, an opportune moment, they may begin resistance. And since oil installations are on the territory, not in the seas, they are easily controllable, sabotageable. Resistance may be launched at an opportune moment. Now, the most important argument of these people is that despite bullying that Trump can do, as the United States have done a lot in Western hemisphere over the decades, the desire of Latin American countries to acquire independence from bullying has not subsided or maybe even increased. And moreover, and that's the biggest argument, China has not been squeezed out, and Europe has not been squeezed out, but concluded all kinds of trade accords and a free trade with Europe. And as long as China can produce cheaper, better, and more than the United States, all these moves of securing Latin America for the United States are just empty talk. Because what counts in the end is economic performance and economic power. And there China is ahead. Now, speaking of the Middle East, what they point out, these critics, but also many American critics, such as retired American military officer Mr. Davis and many, many others in their podcasts and broadcasts, is that Trump may have miscalculated. And the Russians point that out too. Miscalculated in the sense that his whole success in the current attack on Iran is predicated on the collapse of the regime or on the revolution inside Iran. And that may not happen. Moreover, and here I could add from myself, it's unlikely to happen. And that is because of the very identity and religion, a religious factor of Shia Islam. And let me just say a couple of words about Shia Islam. Is that it's very different from the Sunni Islam, and in some ways it's similar to early Christians, and that is something that's completely gone from modern Christians, except a few monks, and that is the kind of cherish of suffering. The Shia Islam is based on the murder of Hussein, who was a grandson of Ali, and his suffering, and that murder is put in the centerpiece, just like the dying of Jesus on the cross. It's the suffering and the blood wounds of Hussein that is at the centerpiece of Shia Islam, and moreover, through the generations, the Shia Muslims celebrate the lives of each of the descendants of the Prophet and Ali, and celebrate their suffering, and there's this sort of cult of martyrdom. And so by killing the Ayatollah, the spiritual leader of the Shia, it's comparable to killing the Pope, but maybe it's the Ayatollah means even more than Pope for today's Christians, because Ayatollah is the leader of the faithful. And his murder and his death in office as a martyr is a kind of a banner that would not die out in a week or two or 5 or 6 or a year or 2 or 10 years. This is now historical event that would mobilize the Shia community for a relentless struggle against the Americans and the Israelis. And my feeling is that the Americans and the Israelis do not understand that. It seems to me their plan was rational calculation. You have an opponent, you decapitate the opponent, and the opponent falls apart, as it happened in Syria. But in Syria, it's quite different because President Assad was a minority government. It was a minority dictatorship he inherited from his father, whereas it's exactly the other way around. It is the majority. It's a country of Shia Islam, and the absolute overwhelming majority are religious people, unlike in Western Europe, who say they're Christian. So in that sense, it's a huge mistake, and that is something that was not taken into account. In other words, Iran is not likely to collapse under the weight of rebellion from inside. Now, let me address the issue of what the plan of Iranian leadership may be in the coming weeks. And in the way they are likely to continue the war. Their first item on the agenda is to exhaust the air defense systems of Israel and of the places where American bases are, and there are quite a few of them. They're scattered all over, and then they become sitting ducks. Then they could be eliminated, and that's their ultimate goal, is to rid Middle East from the American bases, to deliver a crushing blow to the allies of the United States, and that is regime change in the Middle East countries, especially those where the Shia are a majority of the population, such as Bahrain, and sizable minority, sizable presence of Shia Muslims in other Gulf countries, Qatar and Kuwait and Emirates and so on. Now, every day of not being able to export oil or gas from the Gulf becomes millions and millions of losses. So it's a huge blow to these monarchies and societies, and they're based on immigrant labor. The passport holding populations in these Gulf states is about 10 times fewer than the people that reside there. And if the economy begins to contract, all these foreigners are likely to leave or to stage a rebellion, one or the other. So this is the kind of an internal weakness of the Gulf monarchies, which is not the weakness in Iran. In other words, the atmosphere in the societies surrounding American bases may turn for the worse for the Americans. Now, the next item that they would like to deliver is a wake up the Muslim world in its resistance to Israel and to the United States. To shame the traitors who collaborate with the United States and with Israel, and to destroy U.S. bases, to cripple or destroy military capacity of Israel, especially its nuclear capacity, And in that sense, if that happens, this would be historic. This would be the beginning of the end of American domination in the Eastern Hemisphere. So we're truly witnessing historical events with unpredictable consequences. And before I finish, I invite you to vote at the end of this video. What do you think in terms of this dichotomy? Is President Trump the daring great leader, and they may prevail, or is he a reckless gambler that may lose? And finally, I invite you to also check out my Substack channel, Vladimir's Substack. There's actually similar information as it is in the YouTube video, but there's an outline, and also, who knows, in case they ever close my YouTube, you may still have access to my Substack channel. And I also invite you to read my book, From Vladimir Lenin to Vladimir Putin, and my other books, and all the programs in this playlist, Issues of Contemporary Politics, are available in chronological order, so you can always open up the playlist and find previous programs there as well. And I say goodbye at this point, and I'll see you soon with another edition of Issues of Contemporary Politics with Dr. Brovkin.